Hi and welcome everyone. I was just caught it back a little bit. Finally, the live just went live without a hitch, so I wasn't expecting that. So there's a little bit of a blackout at the beginning. But hi everybody, we are back now, meaning me and you guys and whoever else wants to join the party here. It is Saturday, March 21st, 2026, and today's live is called Ta-da! Now You See It. And if you looked at any of my posts, you'll see did a little hint drops in there. So we are going to be talking about apportation, one of my favorite subjects of all time, and also portals and UFOs and a few other things, and whatever else you all would like to bring to the mix. If feel free to hop in the live chat if you wish. If not, no problem. I have a series of topics within this heading to cover. Hey, Rita, welcome. Hey there. Today's I'm just going to mark this. This is the little title cover sheet here. There's a lot going on. I'll explain in a minute. So I have, my little, if you're new, to this format of what I'm doing here, I print out basically a little PowerPoint slideshow. I like to do tactile props and things, you'll notice, just anything I can do to kind of stay away from AI and all of that creation. Not that it's not a bad tool, but I just want to keep it, keep it real, so to speak. So anyway, we're going to be talking about a lot of topics in here, but feel free if later on I'm going to kind of do my little run through. It's going to be quite a little wild ride of information that just wants to kind of flow and dump out, but feel free to say something in the chat. I'll be mindful of it. And also toward the end of it, feel free to bring in any other topics that can relate to what I talked about or absolutely not at all. So that's kind of how this thing goes. We just on the fly, see what comes through. I do want to start off by saying I never wear hats usually. And there's a reason why. This is going to be a hint drop for a movie I'm going to mention later. But also I want to give a shout out to, it says Yowie Central on there. I want to give a shout out to Sarah Bignell and her podcast, her wonderful, amazing podcast called Yowie Central, based in Australia. It's all things Yowie and supernatural. And if you don't know what Yowie is, that is the Australian, one of the many names for Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And I did put a link in the post section earlier today of a show I was a guest on 4 years ago in March 2022, talking about all kinds of things, including portals and all sorts of stuff. So I'm going to put that link in the description area below at the end of the show. I highly recommend you go visit that, because whatever I don't cover in this show, you'll hear it there. Actually, should almost just play that show, but we're not going to. We're going to do some other things today. So that being said, before we get into the little slides, I want to just show the crystal of the day. So since we're going to be talking about portals, the crystal of the day is this little geode, and I'm going to hold it up close. So to me, actually, I got to hold it up with a pointer. So to me, if you look at it, let me see if I can get it at right angle without glare. Okay. If you really look at this, to me, it's almost like the back of a Bigfoot or some kind of hominid walking away down a tunnel, a lit tunnel, like a portal. Now you can read it as a being. We can just say a being heading away from us, going down a tunnel of light, or the being is coming toward us and the light is spilling out in the foreground. So this is open for your interpretation. See how you read that, or if you see yet something else happening in there. So anyway, just for fun, for the portal topic, that's what I saw in this handy dandy, little geode. All right. That's the crystal of the day. and that's also a fun work instead of homework for anybody to go look at how those geodes are formed. It's probably a very interesting discussion, could be a show on its own. All right, so now we are going to get into the ta-da, now you see it. So I had to look up where we get the phrase ta-da. Usually we say it with enthusiasm and with a little bit of sound. And actually, from what I can best tell, it does come from, this is a cover of a children's book, and I have it referenced along the side. Again, anything I throw out as references, I will put in the description area below. After the show airs, maybe within 2 days, give me time to populate that section. But anyway, here's a conductor. He's on the stage, and this is supposed to be a big theater, fancy opera theater with a chandelier above. And so ta-da comes from, just making a sound like the fanfare at the end of the finale of an orchestra, when you get out the big kettle drums and everything's crescendoing up, building up the music. And then you're just like, ta-da. So it's like that aha, big ta-da moment. So I brought that up because, for a few reasons, but mainly because the topic today is apportation and portals, and the big bulk of it, and UFOs. But what I want to say is that if you don't know what apportation is, or apporting, It's when something just suddenly appears, literally out of thin air, literally, quite literally. So, I'm going to give some examples of that. And actually, let me dive into that really quick. So, where I'm headed is, I always give you clues on my little cover sheets here. We're going to be talking about apportation with involving sunglasses and sunglass cases, involving little glass, a little piece, like a little, what do I want to say, like a pebble, green glass, involving a little plastic heart, involving marbles. And then we have, it's not apportation, but what we'll go now after that into the portal side with an example of a strange being in a portal, a UFO just suddenly appearing very low overhead. In my experience, my direct experience when I was outside at night in April 2024. And then a wild phenomenon that just suddenly appeared on my phone. So that's where we're headed, okay? And let's get into it. So we'll start off with my direct experiences with apportation. Now, again, I'm going to I'll be thinking if you've had any. Now, this is the show I put in the post section. Episode 104 was the one I talk about portals and all kinds of things. I was also a guest on episode 66 and 67. Now, we're going to start off with this. Let's start off with this heart. So I wanted to put this set against some green grass, but I couldn't recreate the scene. This happened several years ago. So just imagine that pink heart on some green grass. So the direct experience I had with apportation that day, was a few years ago in a public park. And I decided quite consciously, I made it my intention that I want to go to the park and I want to go pick things up. So this was the time of the stupid COVID, heyday. So there was nobody really around. And I'm like, I didn't stay home, forget that business. So I went to the park and I'm like, let me, try to pick up if there's any trash, things lingering around. And so what I did was, I put out my intention. At that time too, I was kind of coming into some knowledge about fairies. Somebody was mentioning that, yeah, if you go somewhere outside and you send out loving wishes and you say that it's my intention to do something good for nature and all of that, the fairies really love that. And they sometimes gift things. So that was very much on my mind when I was going around. So I was picking up little trash here and there, throwing it away. And I made a wide loop around this park. It was a pretty big park. And then by the time I came back to my origin of where I had started by sitting at a picnic bench, kind of looking around, is there anything I can pick up? Really looked, I have an eye for a lot of detail usually. And, I didn't see anything around. Looked down, everything was clean. So by the time I made a big round around and came back and sat down, I looked down and I'm like, oh my gosh, apportation. There was this little plastic. I'm going to show an example. This isn't really it. Okay, this is just like a pink heart. But it was like a little girl's, like a little heart box with the lid had been torn off. So it's just the bottom part, the opening, of like a little heart box. And it was somewhat, pushed into the ground. That's why I was kind of surprised because I would have seen it before I started my trash pickup. And I looked down and I just instantly felt it. That was my little thank you, my little nod and a wink from whatever fae or what fairy realm. I believe that's what it was. It was something else anyway, nature realm, that was leaving a little gift saying thank you. So that's one, example that I know for sure because that thing was not there when I left. Had that happen again, I mentioned in another show when I was standing in the front yard and a neighbor had the ambulance in front of their house and I held my heart and I'm like, oh, I wish them well. And I had just freshly cut the grass. There was nothing on it. And then I looked down after I'd wished them well, really connected in, really felt it like, God, please take care of that person. And then I looked down and there was a white feather with a black tip, and that was an ibis feather. And it was not there before. I mean, that really literally stood out. So that's another example, just kind of like apportation that came out of thin air. Now, sometimes it just is something that's placed on the ground. Sometimes it's actually just popping out in front of you. And I'll tell you an example of that too. And before I go into that, I just want to say to others who have joined the chat, hi, and welcome everybody. And Lisa and Chu, thanks for being here, and everybody else. So now another example, most recently with apportation, was this. This is actually what I got the other day. This is just a couple days ago. It's just like a little green, I don't know what to call it. You guys might have a better, I'm missing the word. It's not a marble, but it's just a little glass piece, and it's green. Anyway, when I was doing a massive raking and taking care of the yard, tons and tons of leaves on the ground. And I had done, moved a ton of it off and put it on the curb. And again, I'm scanning the ground in detail. And I've had a time of completion. And as I was doing the yard work, I always do it with honor. I'm always like in my mind saying, thank you all for being here, meaning the trees, the grass, the plants, the insects, the birds, just all of life. Thank you. And you're all beautiful. That's kind of what I have in my mind. So I completed the whole thing. And only at the very end, I looked down and, there's this green glass piece. And again, instantly, I felt it through the heart space. Sorry if you can't see my eyes. This thing keeps sagging down. Through the heart space instantly. It was just like a, hey, it wasn't like so much a thank you, so much as a, like, we see you and acknowledge you, and here's a little gift. So that's certain levels of apportation. Some get a little more interesting. And I'm going to talk about those for examples of others who have had it happen. Now, be thinking too, if you've had it happen, in your life, if you can think of just something that seems strange or, appeared suddenly. Oh, actually, before I get to others, and forgive me if I bounce all over the place, the way this works too is I've got tons of information just swirling around up here to share. And I always have to calm down, slow down, tamp it down, and, package it neatly so that I can, redistribute it. So bear with me if I get a little excited. I want to say one more thing about apportation. This was the clearest and biggest example in my life, direct experience with apportation. So you see these glasses. So there's 2 pairs of glasses with 2 glasses cases. So there was a time, again, several years ago in my house, or the house I was living in, I was looking for these glasses, for a family member. And I looked everywhere, like picked things up, looked behind it, moved the dust bunnies away, looked in the corners. They were not to be found. And I went through every room methodically. In particular, I went through a room where the computers, set up. And I rolled the chair out, patted the top of it down, nothing in there, looked at everywhere, every drawer, everywhere you can think of. So I went to another part of the house and I'm like, oh gosh, we need these glasses, these, reading, or not reading, but just regular eyeglasses. So I just sat down on the couch in another room and I thought, I just really need them. But okay, if I can't find them, I can't find them. Like, I give up, right? So then later, a little bit later, something said, go back to that office room and look again. I'm like, okay, my intuition or whatever voice, that guides us in a good way. So I go back to the office and I'm like, okay, looking around, don't see anything on the surfaces. Well, I roll the chair back out and both pairs of glasses and their respective eyeglass cases were sitting on that chair. Now, there's no way there was nobody else there in the house to do it. So how do you explain it? It came from somewhere. I didn't put it there. I ain't tripping. I don't do drugs and alcohol. I was fully present in mind and body. So that's apportation. And there are stories of it too. Like in this book, I recommend this book. It's called Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East by Baird Spalding. It's account that happens in the late 1800s. And there's a team of people, explorers on an expedition that go to the Far East, and they want to find adepts and people who can supposedly pull things out of thin air. It's like the Jesus example, that you're so high vibrational, you're a being of much higher dimension, that you can do things like that, like walking on water or pulling a loaf of bread out of nowhere. Again, that's what an adept can do. They can do this apportation, make stuff suddenly appear. Anyway, they talk about it in this book. So these are thin books. There's about 6 of them. But there's some interesting things in there. It's a good read if anybody is looking for reading material along that vein. Okay. Anyhow, another great example of apportation. Oh, what I wanted to say too, sorry about the sunglasses part. Oh, thanks. Rita says 100%. Yes. The eyeglasses situation. So we could say, well, where is it coming from? Like, how did they get there? And I'll say that, well, some force, I'll say a being with consciousness, and deliberately moved it from one place to the other. So how they do it gets interesting. I will say that it can be another being helping you out, or who knows, maybe it was my higher self in a parallel reality saying, Varleigh is never going to find those things. Let me help her out, put them over here, put them over there. However, there are also instances of another example, not mine, but I'll tell who it is, who had a camera, like a big old-fashioned camera missing, and then suddenly it appeared. And that was actually done by some Sasquatch, some Yowies. So that example was actually talked about on that Yowie Central show. I told you about the link that I'll put in there, and that's in my post section. Her name is Silrita Ontaria, and she has a YouTube channel. Anyway, she tells the story on one of Sarah's shows. And so she said she and her family were sitting around and she knew there was a Yowie activity. So again, Yowie is the name in Australia, one of many. And so there's this camera sitting off, to the side of this one living room. And all of a sudden it's missing. And so they're looking everywhere. She says they're looking high and low, turning mattresses over and everything, can't find it. So then they just kind of give up, kind of like I did with the eyeglasses. And then they're sitting down and watching TV at night. And all of a sudden they look down and there's the camera sitting at their feet. Now, nobody got up and moved it. Nobody got up and checked. They'd already checked under the couch. It wasn't there. It just suddenly manifested. And so that's something known that that's something that is known that the Yowie or the Sasquatch can do. They can just bring stuff from God knows where and drop it right at you. So that also happens with examples with Sasquatch in stereo. In stereo, that was a funny slip. Sasquatch Ontario YouTube channel with Mike Patterson over there. Now, he has had direct experiences with a Sasquatch family, I think for over like 12 years now. And he has a great channel and, head over there too. Anyway, he has repeatedly instances where there's a known family and a known Yowie or Sasquatch called Nefertiti, I think his name is. And he's a little prankster and jokester. And he has, out of thin air, dropped marbles to Mike. And I think Mike said he has hundreds by now. So that's kind of fun to go look over there. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. It's better if you get it from the source. But that's a known thing where they exchange or, give marbles. And gifting is a whole thing with the whole Sasquatch thing. I have a separate show covering that and all things Sasquatch. And of course, you can look all over the internet. And especially at this Yowie Central channel, there's some really great accounts by people experience things, not only in Australia, but all over the world. So anyway, but that's an exact... what I want to say. I don't want to say known phenomenon, but it's a phenomenon that people know about, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I'm here to say that I've experienced it. Others have experienced it. And it's a real thing. And to me, it's just fascinating. That's why I say it's one of my favorite topics, because it gets back to that situation like with the Bible, where you can walk on water. You're an adept. You just say, hey, I need a loaf of bread. And you pull it out of thin air. And because we're seeing this with marbles and like the eyeglasses and whatever, it is possible. So I'm just excited because I'm just at the tip of discovering the like deeper magnitude of what this means, that we can all do it and, just bring stuff through. I think, that's one of the gifts that's going to come online very soon, that we'll be able to remember we can do it and how to do it. All right. I think that's enough for now. But anyway, while we're on this page, I wanted to bring up too, one of my favorite short little clip on YouTube is Scott Carpenter, and he has passed, transitioned on, I think in the last couple of years, but he had still has a channel. His son keeps it up, but lots of phenomenon. In this case, he captured, and I feel it in my bones, that's absolutely legit. It's called Strange Being in a Portal, and you can see an actual circular kind of opening. It's a little shimmery around the ring. And then that's a zoom in. And then you can see the head and the shoulders and the forearms of a being coming through. Now, Scott's work is really pretty phenomenal, because if you're not familiar with him, he would walk on the trails and everything. And instead of having like a camera in front of him or around his neck, facing forward as he's going through the trails, he mounted on his shoulder a camera that shot footage backwards. So for whatever reason, the beings that he captured did not anticipate that thing was recording behind him. But I've seen his footage and it's undeniably legit. I mean, there's one I don't like the word capture, but you know what I mean. There's one series of video footage that he does, and then he analyzes it, where he captured a white Bigfoot on the trail. And again, it was behind him. So he walked by. So the being thought, oh, he's not recording me. And it very fluidly comes out of above a rock and peaks and then goes back down. And again, the more you look at footage with this kind of thing, the more you have your own truth detector that can say, yeah, that's legit, or that looks fake. So with all of his stuff, for me, it's all registering as absolutely true. And I've had my own, Bigfoot encounter that I talk about on Yowie Central shows 66 and 67 that happened to me in North Carolina when I was about 14. And once you know, There's no believing in Bigfoot. If you've had an experience, they exist. And so I'm just saying, 1,000% they exist. And it's not just like, oh, there's some over in this region in California, or they're only there, or they're only in Washington State. No, they're wherever you are. So one of the roles of Bigfoot and Sasquatch, I call them Sasquatchy people, is to help wake people up to, the false matrix in our world and get beyond that. And so same thing with like the role of UFOs. These phenomena coming in it's like go time for these beings. It's okay for them to really be in our face and let us know that they exist, so that we start to question our world, and to know that there's much more beyond what we've been told. I think a lot of us are onto it by now. Our history not adding up to what's, we're seeing in the past to now, and that we may have been told many, many lies by now. Oh, I also want to say, for whatever reason, if the live cuts out, it should be okay. My internet was showing unstable a little bit earlier. I'll just pop right back on with the part 2, and it should be able to connect right away. But I think we'll be okay. Anyway, I don't know why I went down the whole Bigfoot path, other than, check out some of those channels which do talk about apportation with the marbles and whatnot. And we'll get into portal talk. Actually, I think, we'll get into portal talk now. So I don't know if any of you out there have experienced a portal. I talk about it intensively in that episode 104 on Yahweh Central. It's just an audio podcast. But I did, and I mentioned that in the last live, my previous live, that I was in California walking along a redwood, like a balance beam. And then all of a sudden everything went eerily quiet, and actually in negative pressure. It almost felt like it was sucking the air out of my lungs. And the whole environment I felt like suddenly I was in some kind of like dome or portal. And in that, it was not only negative pressure, but everything went silent, not a chirp, no rustling of leaves, no wind even. So I know they're possible. I know they exist. Not only that example, but I've seen other examples. Portals can open up anytime. There are naturally occurring portals, and there are contrived or manipulated controlled portals. We see that and know that in mainstream news, right? CERN, that's a controlled portal. Now, my understanding is if it's a positive-oriented portal, that's what we call Stargate. Or like our heart space is a portal, or women are a portal. They bring in the spark of life. They bring in children. They bring in human beings, living human beings. So actually, women in and of themselves are portals. And that's actually why in the spiritual warfare, the dark side, if you will, trashes women, tries to put them down at every turn, because they resent the fact that women can bring in the spark of life, the God spark, right? And start combating them. Think about it. But anyway, and wormholes are supposedly what you call it if it's a negative use or used by negative entities. And that would be CERN. That would be a lot of stuff alluded to in the movies, like the Avengers. They have one in there that would be the CERN equivalent. They even show spoiler alert, whenever I talk about movies, they even show when they're trying to use this blue tesseract to make these portals that there's like a sign on the building and it says dark something like operations. So they're telling you what that is. So that's negative use of a portal. On my post section, I put, the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. There's a scene called Get Off the Road. And you see the road starts doing weird things, like, doing this. And you see a portal. And then there's a tree. And then the dark entity on a horse, is coming out from the tree. But if you look on the other side of the tree, there's no there. There's just nothing. So they're coming out of a portal. So there are tales in movies, as we know. Actually, I'm hopping out of order, but I'll just go there. I'm going to mention some other movies. I'm just going to rattle them off. You may know about them already. Hey, welcome, Joy to Share. Let's see. Oh, well, I will read what Joy to Share says, because it has to do with the movies. He says, Tesseract is connected with time travel and A Wrinkle in Time series as well. Yeah, I didn't see that movie or that series or read the books. But thank you for bringing it up. So that's another one on the list. If you guys are interested in things to do with portals, I put in a post section on my YouTube channel a few little clips. So like Dragonheart 3, and that movie, there's a kid and he's learning to portal hop, like using tree shadows. So he has to jump from one tree shadow to the other to like portal travel. We have Doctor Strange, from the Marvel Universe. he has to have, I think it's called a sling ring or something to make this like, if you took a sparkler and went like this real fast, it's kind of like that effect to make his little portals. I mean, there's going to be so many movies. I'm going to forget some like in your face ones. Well, we have Star Trek where they go in the, beam me up, Scotty. That's kind of a different way. It's like using a beam, but it's portaling. It's teleporting. It's another kind of portaling, right? Then we have Stargate from 1994, cheesy as heck movie, but lots of tells in there about Stargates and other things. Then we have Adjustment Bureau. I just go like this. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. If you haven't seen the movie, you've got to see that one. It's really good. What else? Let's see. Told you about Lord of the Rings. Yeah, there's so many others. So, yeah, I don't know. We could go on and on about those. I was trying to find positive movies like that had positive examples of portals, and I kept just coming up with like the dark side portals. But anyway, if you think of any, and just for fun, throw it in the chat or later if you want to make a comment. Okay. Well, anyway, that's enough about those. Now, what else was coming up to me that I didn't plan on talking about, but I'm going to just throw it out there real quick. It'll be fun work, for you guys if you want to jump down this little path to investigate further on your own. But the St. Louis Arch, okay, that's absolutely some kind of a portal. And the more you look into the history of that city and you look into the code of, the height and the number of acres, they always like throw in the 33s, 17, any combination of these kind of darker aspects of numerology in with their, building stuff. Also Miami. So that was my hometown. And they're building, I know that whole area where they're building this suspension bridge. And I'm like, what the heck? Why? This has no practical reason whatsoever. It's overkill what they're doing. And I see what they're doing. It's all about the symbolism. And they're kind of doing what they did in St. Louis with the arch. They're, at least my understanding of it, they're making like portals. Because when you look at what's right adjacent to it, some kind of landmarks, the residuals left behind. They have just one little fragment of a Sears tower. It's really small. It's an Art Deco style. But there's something all behind Sears and how that got started. Anyway, there's some negative aspects there. So there's just this little fragment left there. And when you look at the overall ground plan of what's going on, it's right by water. There's a lot of elements that to me show that they're trying to create negative side, trying to create some type of portal. I just feel it. And again, I know the area, there's no rational reason why they're doing what they're doing. It's a series of arches, and I'll link some kind of YouTube or whatever for anyone who just wants to do an easy click. Otherwise, do that investigation on your own. But it's kind of a series of arches, and it's way too grand for the place where it's at. It just, again, I'm like shaking my head. Doesn't make sense. Other than if they're trying to amp up some kind of portal energy. So anyway, that just jumped in here at the end. And also, when you think about it, the Sears Tower, it used to be called Sears Tower. I'll still call it Sears Tower in Chicago, the big black building with the two huge white antenna. They kind of form like a portal or a gateway in and of themselves. And they hint at that in another movie, another cheesy movie. It's actually free right now on YouTube, is called Jupiter Ascending. So there's some tells on what the dark side used to do. I don't know if it's so much done anymore. But they have a huge scene up there at the Sears Tower, right at those two antennas. So anyway, and there's more to it. I'll just let you go watch that if you want to. But it's all about portal energy happening up there too in that movie. All right. So another interesting thing that is not portal. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I kind of jump around a bit. Let me finish showing some book references, and then I'll show you there's a case that's not portal and not quite apportation. So I don't know what category we'll put that in. Maybe you guys can help me with the word for it when we get there. But let me do this. So another source of where people might be talking about portals are Dolores Cannon. I know a lot of you are probably already familiar with her, but she has a series of books, all kinds of topics. She was based in the Ozarks, and what she did was start and coin something called QHHT, which is Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And she started off doing hypnosis, and then she started seeing that her clients were coming up with some really strange things coming through the hypnosis. And it turned out that they were connecting in with their higher selves, which were tapping into all kinds of esoteric topics, mystery topics, mystical topics, and galactic topics. So what she did was write a whole bunch of books, which were just bringing in some knowledge coming through her clients. So it's pretty interesting. So in this case, she has a whole series called Convoluted Universe. I think it's books 1 through 4. And in there, there's a lot of talks about portals and Sasquatch and Atlantis and all the good topics that we want to know about that I'm bringing up here too. And then while I'm at it, talking about Dolores, I wanted to bring up that if anyone out there, if you think you're going through or know you're going through a great awakening, or even if you already have, just this might be something you might want to look into. When I want to say first waking up, it's like when I was second waking up, there's another wave of it for me. I was drawn to read this book, the three waves of volunteers in the New Earth by Dolores Cannon. That's a great book if you're kind of like first waking up to like, wow, this world doesn't make sense. What's going on? Everything I knew was a lie. This was kind of good to read. And also, if you are also waking up to the world of ETs and like, oh my gosh, did I dream about one when I was little? Was that real? Was that just my imagination? Why am I feeling something come up on the radar about a connection or affiliation to galactics or ETs? This one might be good for you. Again, only look at these if you're drawn to. If not, don't. But it's called The Custodians, Dolores Cannon. Again, as I had a second wave of waking up, I was like, wow, I really needed this to put some pieces together so my world would start to make a little more sense amidst a lot of really kind of seemingly crazy stuff going on out there right now. All right, now looking at Bigfoot, I did in other beings. I did talk about Scott Carpenter, and that was that strange being in a portal, video I was talking about. I ordered his book. I haven't read it yet, but I ordered this book that he did. Now, he says the Nephilim among us. I'm not so crazy about Nephilim as the word choice. However, it's a whole nother topic. But this is the identity and origin of Sasquatch and other mysterious creatures, and just his amateur research, But he has like amazing footage of Dogman and other types of beings out there in the woods. So anyway, it might be a good read, again, showing reading material too, because sometimes when the world just seems kind of crazy or we don't want to watch, negative media and all of that, sometimes it's good just to read an old-fashioned book. Now, I'm not the type to do Kindle and all of that. I want tactile. I want actual pages that I can read. So here's another one. Ron Moorhead, well-known researcher. He's the one that did in modern times, like the first recordings of Bigfoot howls and screams out in the Sierra. It's called Sierra Sounds. If you want to dig around on YouTube, you probably can find some recordings of that. And then again, Sasquatch Ontario on YouTube, Mike Patterson, he has some recordings. I highly recommend that video of his called Sasquatch Sings, because he has the recordings of Sasquatch kind of going through a little like chant singing. And again, it rings totally true for me. It goes through my whole body, resonating as true. And side note on that, I guess we'll hop back into the Sasquatch topic. People who do record the voices and things, some people refer to it as samurai chatter. And there's no accident there, because samurai, comes from Japan. And some say that one of the first star beings landing on Earth and interfacing with humans had a very Japanese sounding language. So again, I've talked about in previous shows that there is some kind of connection with some Sasquatch having a galactic connection. Anyway, that just gets deeper and deeper, so I'll just drop it there. But anyway, talking to galactic, we're going to get there right around the corner. But before that step, let's do this one other phenomenon that I can't explain. So let me do this setup just verbally, and then I'll put up a little visual. So I had to do a move. It was pretty massive. I had to move like 3 times in 3 years. And it was at the end of this move recently. And I was in the moving truck because I did it mostly myself. And so I was like totally exhausted toward the end. And I had this rental truck and I had to clear it out. I only had like a few hours to clear it out, return the truck, that whole bit. So I was halfway through. And then at some point, I'm like, I just can't keep going. And I had a helper, but then they had to leave and they were going to come back. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I really was at one of those low points. Like, oh my gosh, you just want to fall on your knees and cry, but you can't because you're so exhausted. You can't even do that. So right in that moment, I was just so done. And I just said to God, hey, show me the way we get this done. It's just me here. The other help will come back in a little bit, but help me do this. How do I keep going? So I remember looking down at my camera phone at the time in that low, low point. So somehow I'm just like, okay, took a breath, just kept going, even though it was slow going to do what I could do. So finally, the other helper came back, and then it was a happy ending. Yes, all the stuff finally got off the truck. I turned it back in, and I was like, thank God. So, but what happened was that next morning, I looked at my camera and I was looking at some of the photos. So just periodically, I took a picture of the progress of how much I got off the truck, and it was pitch black out. So anyway, I looked and I'm like, what is this? And I looked down because there was, how you put the camera maybe in your pocket and you're walking around and sometimes it misfires and it takes its own pictures on its own. So you may have like darkness because it was in your pocket or in your bag or whatever. Well, I saw a couple of those here and there, but I looked at the timestamp, and in the moment that I had my absolute low point where I was just saying, God, angelics, whoever up there is on my team, on my side, help. It's just throwing out the phone a friend, help. I looked at the timestamp and I'm like, what's on my photo? There's no explanation for this. Even if I wanted to create this and type it, I wouldn't even have thought of this. This is what showed up. So wait, sorry, this is going to be a blow up over here. So the main part's going to be here. So I looked at my photo and okay, it's dark, it's black. There's a little bit of like, what do I want to say here? Like a little bit of the sidewalk is up here at this corner. It's just a little bit more beige. But anyway, I see this. It's like reminding me of the Matrix movie. It's green text running across the screen, all repeated, repeated, repeated. And my phone has never done this. So I, zoom in, sorry, over here, and it says love, repeated, repeated, repeated. And that was on 2 frames out of all the pictures on my phone at precisely the time that I was at my lowest low. So to me, I don't know, what to call it other than it's a phenomenon. I don't know who did it, but I know that's a message from quote unquote somewhere else, not from around here, that it jumped onto the phone. Now, some say that Bigfoot, can do things like this and manipulate the photos on cameras, but I didn't sense any Bigfoot on the property yet. So I don't know. Is that just divine? Do we call it angels? What do we call that? How'd that get there? I didn't do it. And so anyway, this is just one of those phenomenon. So I just wanted to bring that one up. That still will be a head scratcher for me for a while. Anyway, I don't know if any of you get a little hit on what that could be, but I was just wowed. All right, now we'll get into a little bit of UFO talk on the theme of ta-da, like now you see it. So here's another story. This happened in April. I mentioned April 2024. I was talking with somebody out, and there's not much to see here, so I'll just hold it up and take it down and tell you the story. But what we're seeing here is the top of a roof at night, and we're seeing some trees in the background. They're lit up a little bit. This printed a little bit darker than I wanted to. Now, this is me. This was on my phone, and I edited it just with my finger because I was trying to replicate what I couldn't take a picture in time of. I just put yellow down first, these little dots with my fingertip, and then white over them, just to kind of give you the idea. This is the real setup behind. I took a picture without being able to see the craft, but there were like 4 lights. I'm pretty sure it was 4. There may have been a 5th, but I was standing on the driveway looking toward the trees, and a friend or acquaintance friend was looking at me, not toward the trees, so looking over my shoulder the opposite way. Well, we were having a great conversation. And, just talking under the stars. It was night. It was like a Friday night, I think. We're just talking away, got in a good conversation. Had maybe been talking even an hour out there because it was a nice night. And all of a sudden, I'm looking over her shoulder and I'm like, what am I seeing? Because like in the neighborhood where she was, I know this neighborhood all my life. So I know there's no stadium lights around. There would have been no lights around. It was a very dark neighborhood. And in the moment I casually just kind of looked up, I saw these lights in a row. And all of a sudden, without even thinking, my whole heart, like everything, I was inside, like screaming for joy, like giddy. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I even have a clip that I put in my posts of the video. I got the audio recorded right after it disappeared. So what happened was I saw it. And I'm like, what am I seeing? Because I'm like thinking my rational mind's going like, are those stadium lights or whatever? No, but it couldn't be because it was only like 50 feet in the air. It was like right above the tree that I showed you those little, up lights on. It was just above that tree. It was so super low. And the thing that freaked me out was it was dead quiet, not a sound on that thing. And I knew what it was, intuitively. So inside, I'm just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And the audio that I caught after it, what happened was, sorry, I'm looping. I'm so excited. See, I can't even like talk. I was so excited by this. This is the most real UFO encounter I've ever had. I mean, I've seen them and taken pictures through my sky watching, but this was like right there. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And I couldn't even get it out to the friend to like turn around you and look up. So no sooner than I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting all excited. I heard in my mind, oh shit, she sees us. And then right in that moment, those little lights that I showed you start dimming out one by one. And by the time I could like tell her, I'm like, like turn around, like look, the last light dimmed out. And it's like right when I pulled out my phone to try to catch something to see if maybe even without the lights on, my camera would catch it. So I started like filming, and then the friend said, wait, was that, we think it was a plane? I'm like, it wasn't planes. And you hear me, the raw, authentic reaction, because I was just so excited. So anyway, that's just a very clear example. It was right there, and it was so low and not one sound. And I just that found it funny that it played in my mind. Oh shit, she sees this, because I guess, somehow there was some, mind reading connection there. And so then poof, it went away. And I did still do the video footage. I was hoping to do the enhancements like I do in my other sky stuff where, up the brightness or whatever, try to find something, but I couldn't find anything in there. So anyway, it's pretty exciting. Now there's a similar thing I got very excited about recently posted by the YouTube channel Tarot by Isabella. And I put that in my post section too. She had a co-host, Gary, and he's from, I think it's called Alternative, what's his channel? Alternative Interactions or something like that. Anyway, they were talking about a friend of Gary's who had his camera in the UK filming upward. He just saw lights in a cloud and just started filming straight up. Well, they looked at it, and you can see it's kind of the same color lights. That's why I'm mentioning it. Those lights in my picture, where'd I put it? Let me bring it back up. Hang on. Okay. So the video that they show is, a much more detailed version showing these lights, but it reminded me in the footage that they have shown on Isabella's channel, it's the same color and the same feeling. And so that footage, I highly recommend you go look at that show, because it has backlit in those yellow lights that I showed you. You see humanoid forms moving around. So the guy caught it like really clear. And, they, Isabella, that does the Tarot by Isabella, do go see the original footage of that video, but she talks about it. She's looking at her crystal ball to see, bring through, okay, what was going on with that scene of the guy shooting, the footage straight up. And what she got was, they didn't realize that the guy was actually able to capture them on the film. So to me, these kind of like sloppy cloakings that the ETs might be doing, it's okay, because now it's time. The slow disclosure, it's coming. It starts with us, nobody else, not looking to mainstream media or anything. It goes through our personal experiences, or me sharing the way I'm doing, or like, Isabella's channel with Gary and his friend Dan, who took the footage, and we just start sharing and talking about it. Now, again, for me, I've said it time and time again on my channel, whenever you see these things, just feel it out. Does it have a good vibe, bad vibe, or neutral, so that if you can stand there and be in the presence of it. For me, I just got so excited, like I was going to stay there and see what's going on. Now, in the over 6 years of really observing the skies and documenting cloak and craft, there's only been maybe 2 or 3 times where I see a cloud and I sense some cloak and craft, and I'm like, that doesn't feel good, and then I go inside. So that's only 2 or 3 times out of 6 years of dedicated watching day in, day out up in the sky. So it's not bad. So for me, that says we've got way more benevolence up there. People, should not be afraid, but use your own inner truth detector. Don't stay around a situation if it feels bad, right? If you see something and it senses like, no, then step away, right? Okay, so anyway, I'll have another little slide here. So when I talk about, doing the documenting cloak and craft for over 6 years, these are 2 of my, everything's backwards. two of my like prize winning examples. I'll self-declare if you look at my playlist on my channel. So this was one that I caught backlit in a lightning storm. And as you can see, it very much looks like a big ass kitchen knife. And that's, I think, like something illuminated on the side. It's sitting on a tuft of quote unquote cloud, but to me, that's like a heavier substance like plasma. And that was diving into a cloud. So what I did was I videoed a lightning storm. It was staying there far too long. This is a known area of a neighborhood I've known for, 50 years. And I know the weather systems. And I'm like, what is this thunder cloud, lightning storm hanging around for over an hour and a half? It never does that in Miami, Florida. It would just, move along. It didn't. Anyway, I covered that in another show and I'll link that below. But what happened was there were flashes and they seemed very artificial. And one big cloud area, it seemed it was flashing. Then the other one would like flash back. Excuse me. So to me, there was some type of intelligent communication going on, something. They were connecting. It was related. So anyway, I thought, let me just sit here and I'll just video. I saw flashes going on. Let me just video, see if I can see anything later. So what happened was I videoed it for a while, went frame by frame by frame. And as the flash happened, that's when I stopped the frame. And then, that's when I got this backlit. So, I mean, this cannot be anything natural. And it was way too big. It was a big thing happening, over a few blocks north of me in the distance, but not far. And it was pretty big. Then this one was daytime. And that's another example of a craft that just started developing, appearing very low in the sky. And in this show, I cover it in detail too. It's like a shuttle, and there's even like perfect circles on the sides with an emblem that I could detect in the camera. So what I want to say is no fear here. I had no fear with any of these. And like I said, only a couple times I did. And it was like a cloud, and it just felt bad, and I went inside. But these are, if anything, what I say is like galactic family and friends. I've said it before. If you see anything up in here and you get a good feeling like I did that other night, that's just friends and family, like looking down, or maybe it's like tourist ETs looking down saying, oh, what are these people doing? But I think it's more than that. It's like people on our team, I think, assigned to us to make sure everything's good and in check. I don't think, there's anything bad there whatsoever, because I would have felt it. I would have been like, oh, crap, go inside. But it was like, oh, my gosh, I want to see. What is this? Anyway, couldn't have been more in childlike wonder if I tried in that moment that thing was over, when we were talking. Anyway, here's another example, too. Just weird stuff, appear in the sky. Now, this one, it looks like lights, and it looks like the outline of some type of craft in the sky. Now, this I didn't get any feeling off of because it was way in the distance. And I took a photo at night. So I encourage all of you to do this too. If you got a camera, you just see something weird, take a picture. And even on your camera, there's just basic settings where you can edit the photo. And all I do is play around up and down with the settings, with the levels of brightness, contrast, and color saturation. That's usually enough. That's all you got to do to start seeing stuff pop up in your photos. So this is a case where later on, I took a picture. I'm like, I kind of feel something happening over there. And then I went inside and I zoomed in, and then this popped up. These are lights. And up here, this is where this break in the lights is this weird shape. It's like almost like a hood ornament, like a star-like shaped thing. So anyway, it just gets fun. That's why I've been doing this channel this long. And I told myself that I'll stop doing my sky watching channel when I don't see anything in the sky anymore. And it's only ramped up, and there's more and more strange phenomenon to see. So anyway, I know we went on quite a journey. Sorry if I was a little scatterbrained through this one, but there's just, you can just see I'm excited about the topic. I don't think there's much more I wanted to bring up. I think that was probably more than enough. But again, I just encourage you. There's so much going on in the skies. If you don't do it already, even if you're just, for 5 minutes a day, 2 to 5 minutes, instead of like hustling and bustling, if that's you, just stop a minute and look up and just stand there, like lean against a car or a wall or whatever, and just really watch just one area of the sky steadily for those minutes. And what you're going to do is start to see patterns, like are the clouds moving in a way that makes sense? Sometimes you see two clouds moving together in the same altitude. Like that's impossible with regular wind physics. So that means you've got two cloaking craft in there, like docking. You just see weird color phenomenon, whatever. And just for fun, snap a picture, I guess that's the old way of saying it, but take a picture and then play around with the levels like I talked about. And I think you're going to start to see some pretty wild stuff. Um, Joy to Share says there were tons of satellites moving through the sky the other night. Beautiful starlit sky where everything was visible. Ooh, I'm glad you had a good sky to observe. Yeah, sometimes, it's cloudy and we want to see stuff and, it's too much cloud cover. But yeah, the satellites thing, I'm with you on that. Some might be legit, but there's way too much stuff moving around there up in the sky for everything to be a satellite. So yeah, I've got other shows way back where I used a nighttime camera, so nighttime goggles, if you will. It was like a version, they're like under $150. You can get a decent pair for that. And you want the one that has like infrared on it too. And you start looking through those and you see a lot of stuff come to life that you normally wouldn't see with the naked eye. And so, yeah, I caught one time a craft moving high up, and it wasn't satellite. It wasn't the International Space Station, none of that. And it clearly sent signals, like deliberate as it was moving along the sky. Oh, Georgia here says, ooh, infrared, good idea. Yeah, I have a show, and I'll link it below, where I show you what it's like just to have nighttime goggles of a picture of a palm tree with coconuts. And then I show right next to it the same view, but with the infrared turned on, and you just see infinitely more. It's really incredible. And so I played with that for a while. I ditched the camera for a while because it was draining a lot of battery, but I should, resume that practice again with those nighttime goggles. It's pretty fun. I heard about somebody on another podcast say that they saw UFO like really big and, closer up when they used those. So that's why I even bothered buying some. There's another phenomenon I will say too, that when you just stand there and just look up for a good amount of time, and again, 5 minutes these days feels like forever in a society where they're trying to do 1 minute and less shorts and, YouTube clips and TikTok and all that. But if you can just stand there, like for 5 minutes, I think is a good amount of time, even 2, whatever you can do. But the more you look up at the night sky, like there was a time a few years ago where I saw these flashes. It was like a bright flash and then nothing. And then over here, a bright flash and then nothing. And then what I realized later was that was like in the movies when there's a flash discharge at the back of a craft as it hops into like hyperspace. I mean, it definitely was a craft jumping dimension, or maybe it was like a flash portal, whatever you want to call it. So it gets pretty wild out there. And if you can go with somebody else, it's fun. Like if you don't know anyone directly, maybe get to know a neighbor or somebody. It's just, I don't know, there's more of a dynamic that comes along, I think, if you can skywatch at night with others. It's almost like if these are in any way, shape, or form, your galactic friends or family or custodians, guardians of you, looking out for you, they tend to like to show off, I like to say. So, and depending on where your neighbor might be from, I had one who I swear had some real great connection, because every time I would see the sky with her, we saw tons of, UFO activity. And whenever I would go by myself, it was like nothing, or just like one thing. And with her, we'd see like a bunch of stuff popping off. So, maybe find a fun friend with good like galactic connections. And then it gets more exciting. But anyway, what I want to say overall is no fear here. And if anything, I've even experienced healings by calling in my galactic family. Nothing I normally do, but in the last few years, I thought, hey, come into some knowledge where we have a galactic team who can help heal us. And I had one spontaneous healing happen, and I wasn't even asking for it. And I was actually talking with an intuitive, a psychic at the time, remote, on YouTube. I found her, via YouTube in Australia. She's based, and we were just doing a Zoom call. And all of a sudden, my light started flashing. It never does. And at the same time, she said, oh my gosh, I feel like heat in my face. That's my psychic center. And I'm like, you do? And then all of a sudden I started feeling heat like rising up. And it was so strange. And right before that, she heard a word in her mind to tell me, and the word was thermodynamics. And I'm like, okay. It's a cool topic, but okay, doesn't really have a meaning to me. And then she started getting hot and I started getting hot. And then all of a sudden, it passed. And then we were talking about other things. I'm like, what? Well, that was weird, Well, the next morning, I realized I had an instantaneous healing, because I had like 3 injured toes, and then they were painful, and they totally were fine the next day. I'm like, oh my God, that's what that heat was. That was a healing. Now, to me, that was galactics helping out. And there's ways that we can just connect in. I've had other experiences where I've done healings with people, and I just say, God be here present, or I'm just, don't even say that. I'm just like, oh, I wish this person well. I hope they're okay. And all of a sudden I have heat coming through my hands. And that's like the Bible talks about laying of the hands to heal people. That's exactly what it is. You have a divine force coming through and assisting to help heal. And it kind of gets hot when it's healing. And I had a situation where that happened. And then, it stopped. The person had instant relief. You could see in their face, their body relaxed. And then I looked out of the corner of my eye and this bright white spark goes flying across the room. So it was some kind of divine help. Now, the line gets kind of interesting. Is it angels, guardian angelics? Is it ETs? Is it just source itself? Like, name it what you want to name it. Doesn't matter. It's just some loving power there in the room with you to assist. So I think sometimes we get too tripped up on, ooh, well, that I don't want to call that an ET, or angel can be beautiful, or angel can be, ooh, I don't know, like fallen angel energy, let's just call it love. Back to my little slide where it was just all green, love, 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 love. We can sum up everything with that, right? All right. Well, anyway, I think I've chatted on long enough. What is it? Oh, just about an hour. I will do this. I did want to bring up another book reference. And this I heard on another great YouTube channel, really great YouTube channel. If you're into ETs or just coming into, again, this knowledge or want to learn more, again, don't get freaked out. Don't get scared. I think there was a time where there are a lot of negative ones. I think that time is over. I think now we're entering a new era where it's just mostly benevolent. I think the more evil types are kind of kicked to the curb. But this YouTube channel called Barry Littleton, he gets into some really interesting aspects, and he's heavy into the Star Trek, and I think Doctor Who, more of the Star Wars person, but he gets angles if you're into that. But he brought up a book called The Healing Power of UFOs, 300 True Accounts of People Healed by Extraterrestrials by Preston Dennett. And he brought that up on his channel, so I did order it. I've only kind of like leafed through it a little bit. But since I had that healing, while I was on a Zoom call with a psychic intuitive, I realized that's all possible, And so anyway, that might be of interest to some of you, or one of you out there at least. And if you haven't thought about it before, that they can assist. And actually, I've done that recently where I'll pray to God, Jesus, my ancestors, people who recently passed, friends on the other side, if you will. But now lately too, I say, hey, galactic family, if you can help out, kindly do so. And I have had healings, like especially with like one of my knees. I was trying everything, and I just said, oh, hey, if you don't mind, come and assist in my sleep. I don't want to see you, no offense kind of thing, but I'd rather not see you. But if you can either heal me in the night or help me heal myself, great, right? So I have had healings that way. Lisa says, I look above my house every night, and it's like a main highway, stuff moving everywhere, always the same spot. That is so cool. Yeah, if you guys are in the area of the world where you have beautiful, clear skies, that's just amazing. I'm usually kind of looking through lots of like light pollution and whatnot. But yeah, actually, this is reminding me, there's a link, there's a website. I forget the name of it, but I'll find it and I'll put it in here, after the show's over. There's, I think it's, I don't know if it's just United States based or if it covers the world. I'll try to find the world version, but I know there's one for the United States, and it shows you all of like the darkest spots. So like in Florida, there's a ton of light pollution, but it'll show you like off in the Everglades, like somewhere in the middle is like the darkest space to go watch. And I have gone there once. Oh my gosh, it's night and day what you can see. Sometimes we don't realize, even if you're in this little small town, there's still a lot of light pollution. So anyway, happy Lisa could get out there and see that. Yeah, I haven't done it myself in a while, but I need to go out at night and just watch all the activity. It's really cool. Daytime too, so much happens, but tends to be a little more cloaking going on. And so again, if you can take images with your camera phone and do, like I say, if you haven't done it before, just play around. Sometimes you just feel something's weird, even if you don't see it with your physical eyes. Still take a picture in that general direction, because oftentimes later you go and look in your photo and just up and lower the levels of the brightness, contrast, color saturation, and sometimes your phone might have it'll say shadow and it'll say something else, and you can play around with that too, and you'll start to see stuff pop pop it out in your photos because the camera has a little more range, of visibility than our eyes right now. So it's pretty cool. Well, anyway, unless anybody has anything else to say, I think I will, what do I want to say, sign off. However, I think I'll pull a card though. So if anybody's into Oracle cards, I'll pull a card. If not, feel free to jump off. But I thank all of you for being here tonight. And actually, it is spring has sprung where I'm at. So for Northern Hemisphere, happy spring. And what do we have? Happy fall for Southern Hemisphere. Oops. All right, we got our card. All right, I'm going to sign off for a little message here. So, oh, how funny. I love this. Sorry, I'm looking over here because I cannot see the number. Okay, it's number 4. Just Sing is the card. So look at, she's in her red dress. She's apparently done such a beautiful job that people have thrown roses at her feet. Her arms are extended out to send out that energy from her heart space out to the room. And it just so matches. I just want to bring this up. I took, from my slide cover, I took it from this book, Zen, 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 a violin. So it has the same energy of doing some kind of performance. Now, this could be for a whole audience. So this is where I took the cover from. Yeah, thanks. Joy to share. That's awesome. Ta-da! Exactly. It is the message of ta-da! So here is the fanfare going on. We can just imagine her there singing. Look at the colors, go so well. And she's like, oh, right. And this goes so well with today because I don't know if any of you were able to do your own little meditation or celebration. There was a global, supposedly at 1 p.m. Eastern today. I put it in my post section where everyone was just to come together at 1 p.m. Eastern, whatever that time is for you, and either meditate or sing or dance or move it out, however, just focusing on love, unity, peace. They say respect too. I didn't like that part of it. To me, it's just focus on love, upliftment. So anyway, that was at 1 o'clock. So for me, it was singing and dancing. That's what I did. So this is just a good reminder to just sing. And actually, even if things don't seem to be going well in your world right now, if they are going swimmingly and singingly, great. But if they aren't, it's just amazing how if we can even just do like an or anything, it doesn't have to be great, technically amazing, but just express and move that energy out of yourself. And even open up your arms or just go out into nature and just say, you're all beautiful. Thanks for being here. You really can change up the energy rather quickly. So anyway, I send you all tremendous peace and love. So appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope you have some fun ta-da moments out there too, where now it's kind of like now you, I had the phrase in my mind when I was doing the title, like now you see it, now you don't. But that's why I stopped at now you see it, because some things are always there, but we only just see them when we're ready to, or when we have the eyes to see, right? So the more we uplift and raise our frequency, the more we're going to see more spectacular, magical, phenomenal things. So anyway, go see some great stuff out there. Big hugs to you, Roxy girl. And thank you all. Till next time. Bye. If it'll let me go. Bye, everybody.